The Porsche Panamera has always offered an intoxicating blend of performance and luxury, meaning that it's a car that can allow you to enjoy those windy roads but still prove comfortable over long distances. Now, Porsche has just introduced a brand new version of the Panamera, but it's this latest GTS model that we're here in Germany today to drive. It aims to bring a slightly sharper focus to the overall Panamera experience without losing that comfort that is so important within this luxury saloon car segment. So let's get behind the wheel and see just what this latest Panamera GTS is like to drive. The look of the new Panamera does play pretty close to that of its predecessor, but this GTS version gets a range of tweaks to help it stand out from the crowd a little bit further. You might notice the range of gloss black elements used in areas like the front splitter and also on the badging for the car itself. It's a car with loads of presence out on the road, and that's helped no end from it being a physically big vehicle. As you might expect for a rather expensive Porsche model, the Panamera GTS gets loads of high quality materials throughout its interior. The GTS version in particular gets a lovely Alcantara steering wheel, and there's some carbon effect detailing down the side to remind you that you are in something just a little bit sportier. Of course, we've got these central haptic style feedback controls for the heating and ventilation, and they're easy to use, though when you press them the entire panel goes up and down, which feels a little bit strange. The central screen gets all of your key functions. Actually, the details are very easy to go through and the menus are quite logically laid out, and you get, of course, Apple CarPlay to easily mirror your phone. Now, this latest Panamera debuts a curved display ahead of you, the central screen in the middle, and then there's a third display which is optional for the passenger, and that's where they can see aspects such as media and navigation, and actually that's quite useful if you need them to change certain settings while you're on the move and you're concentrating on driving. The overall fit and finish is excellent. And though there might be a little bit too much shiny black plastic for my liking, it feels like a very lovely place to be overall. The Panamera is a dedicated 4-seater, which means in the rear we've got 2 singular chairs giving you lots of comfort and lots of space to stretch out. Now, the seat is in my position and I'm 5'11" and I've got loads of room for my knees, loads of room for my feet, and actually it's a really comfortable cocoon-like setting to be in. It could argue it's a little bit dark, but then this car does have a sunroof back here to help bring some extra light into the cabin. In terms of features and fittings, we've got dedicated seat heating back here and 2 USB-C charging ports. And I also really like this typically Porsche designed central cup holder, which slots open and close. Oh, it's got such a nice action on it. I know that's a little bit specific, but it feels very pleasant to use, even though the cup holders themselves could be bigger. But again, it's that same sense of luxury and quality that you're getting up front, being pushed back here too. Naturally, you expect a large car like the Panamera and its ideas of cross-country adventures to offer a large amount of luggage space, and it does actually. Thanks to this clever hatch design boot, it offers up 478 litres of boot space, and it's nice and square, and it's reasonably easy to access. There is quite a large lip, so putting those heavier luggage inside might be a bit of a challenge, but certainly it's got more than enough capacity that all 4 occupants of the Panamera can get everything they need in here. The GTS is designed to act as the sweet spot within the Panamera range. It doesn't have the headline performance figures of the range-topping turbo, but it's meant to be more dynamic and sharper to drive than the entry-level model. That means it still gets a 4-litre turbocharged V8 up front with just over 490 brake horsepower. Remember, this isn't the most powerful model, and it's still got over 490 brake horsepower. That means 0 to 60 miles an hour in 3.6 seconds, so it's certainly not slow when it comes to its acceleration. We've got Porsche's active suspension here, which means that I can toggle through different settings and different modes depending on the kind of driving that I'm doing. If the surface is very smooth, then Sport Plus in its firmest setting is about right. But to be honest, for most of my time with this car, I've been driving it with suspension left in comfort. That gives the car the ability to deal with those road imperfections, and it feels like it's not being put off by a large pothole or a bump in the road. I like a little bit of pliancy, and that's where this Panamera feels most at home. I've also got this lovely uncluttered steering wheel. We've got a couple of buttons, of course, but this Alcantara trimmed wheel is nice and thin, and it's a refreshing option against cars from some other German manufacturers which tend to have a rather bulbous, bulky wheel, which I feel numbs some of the sensation that you get from driving overall. But is this Panamera GTS as dynamic as Porsche would lead you to believe? Well, it feels very sharp, very tied down, And the amount of traction that it's got through the bends is quite remarkable. It manages to generate all of its performance almost instantaneously. There's no lag to really speak of, and the mid-range that this car has, the acceleration that it's allowed to deliver throughout that rev range is quite fantastic. It's not like some turbocharged cars where you're getting all of it very low down. This car still likes you to rev it reasonably hard, and it's rewarding you for actually sticking within those gears. You can put it into manual selection by holding down the gear selector, and that gives you full manual control over the gearbox. And as you can hear, the shifts are very sharp, very instantaneous, and surprisingly the whole car just managed to feel very connected and tied down overall. As I mentioned, it is a very big car, but it certainly doesn't feel like it, even on tight twisty roads like these ones in Germany. It shrinks around you, and I know that's a bit of a cliche to say, but this is still a 2-ton car that you can hustle quite easily, and it's very confidence inspiring all the way through. You can feel the whole car searching out that grip, and admittedly it's a nice dry day and we're on very good tyres, but the fact that this car is so big and so heavy and it still manages to go around these corners as if it were, well, a hot hatch really is very impressive. The only thing that I'm finding a bit of a struggle on this new generation of Panamera is the lack of physical quick controls for the driver settings. Now you can get through to them via the main screen, and they're actually a button away when you press them, but the menu itself is a little too complex for my liking. The rest of the nav is excellent, and actually finding things like the media or the navigation is nice and simple, but if you want to toggle between the different suspension settings, the different drivetrain settings, then it's just a bit of a pain when you're on the move. Likewise, if you want to switch off some of the assistance systems like the speed detection system or the lane keep assist, that's 2 menus through the main screen, and I'd rather that was just a physical button or a long press of a certain control down in the center here. On older Panamera models, you had quick fire buttons for the suspension, for the exhaust, for different driver settings which you want to use when you're driving. You don't want to have to stop and tweak between them, because it's nice to be able to do it on the fly. You can tell the difference then, and you can see the kind of effect that it's having. I just wish that that was physical buttons down here. It'd be making it so much easier to use on the move. I don't feel comfortable going through that level of settings and menus when I'm still driving. I just think it's a little bit too distracting, and having those shortcut buttons would take that away. It would make it much easier, and actually that's something that the old Panamera used to do really well. But what about the other side of the Panamera experience when you're not driving quickly? Is it still refined and comfortable? Well, yes, it's a very quiet car. Wind and road noise, bearing in mind we're driving on very big alloy wheels at the moment, are both kept to an impressive minimum. The visibility actually isn't too bad for what is a very long, low-slung car. The front pillar's nice and slim, and actually I've got good visibility thanks to these large wing mirrors. Rearwards, of course, it's going to be a bit restricted due to the design of the car, but actually it's not too bad overall, and I feel like I can accurately position the car within the lane without having to struggle too much. Of course, being a long wheelbase car, you do need to take a little bit of extra caution when you're parking it or when you're driving around tighter sections such as a multi-storey car park. But when you're out and about, I don't find the Panamera all that difficult to drive. If you're coming from a smaller vehicle into this bigger one, of course it's going to take a little bit of adjustment, but I don't think it's that bad overall. Naturally, being a big, heavy car with a V8 engine in the nose means that this Panamera GTS isn't going to be the most efficient. Now, Porsche claims you can probably get around 19 to the gallon. I think that's going to drop quite considerably if you're driving in a manner that befits that GTS badge. So you are going to be visiting the petrol station quite a lot of the time. But the good news is that all of that petrol is being converted into some excellent noise and some excellent performance too. One thing that Porsche always does well, and you'll find this on nearly all of its cars, is the control weights. The steering weight and the interaction that you're getting between the gearbox and yourself are both incredibly well judged. The steering has such a lovely feedback to it, and it feels so natural, and it's not overburdened with weight that happens on so many sports cars where manufacturers feel that to make a car sporty, you have to make the steering really heavy. That's not the case in the GTS. It just feels natural and perfectly adjusted to the type of car that you're in. It means it's confidence inspiring through the bends because you do have a little bit of weight there, but likewise it's not losing that sense of agility that you want from a sportier car. One of the primary negatives of the GTS is that it's just so quick. In the real world, this car is far too fast. There's no reason to be travelling at this sort of speed or to accelerate as quickly as the car actually can when you're on the public road. In fact, if you keep your foot planted in the GTS, you're going to be speaking to the local constabulary very quickly, I would imagine. And that means that to find its limits and to see what it's actually kind of doing through the corners, you're never really driving that quickly. So you could argue that it's completely over-engineered for the type of driving that most people are ever going to do. But like a rugged action camera being tested underwater, it's nice to know that it can do that, and it's not going to break the minute you take it on a seaside holiday. So the GTS feels as though it's been engineered to go an awful lot quicker. The good thing as well with the Panamera is that when you then arrive in town and you want to drive in a slightly more sedate fashion, you can switch through, you go back into normal mode, and everything tones down a bit. The throttle isn't quite as sharp or responsive, and the suspension allows the car to deal with even more bumps and lumps in the road. Certainly when you're just crawling through traffic, the Panamera feels like any normal car to drive. You don't get too much creep from the automatic gearbox, and actually the throttle is nice and easy to get along with. So even when you're doing that normal driving, the Panamera still feels, well, special but easy. This new generation of Panamera feels even more accomplished than its predecessor, and that was already a pretty fearsomely good car. This GTS model in particular feels like the pick of the bunch from the entire range because it offers the kind of performance that you'd expect, but it doesn't lose out on the overarching comfort that's required from this kind of luxurious vehicle. It's well made inside, and it's got all the tech that you need to take away those long hours spent behind the wheel, and certainly from a passenger perspective, it's going to be a really comfortable place to be. I do think that obviously this is going to bring a lot of cost, and having a big veer under the bonnet isn't going to help that, but many of the factors that you'll find in this GTS model will be applicable to other Panameras too. Certainly, it's an easy car to recommend if you're looking for a model that's going to deliver both luxury and performance. Thank you for watching this Motors new car review of the Panamera GTS from Porsche. Now, if you have enjoyed this video, give us a like below and let us know in the comment section what you think of this latest GTS. Would you go for this car, or would you go for the top flying turbo instead? And since you're here, please remember to subscribe to the Motors YouTube channel, and if you click that bell icon, you'll get a notification each time we upload a new video.